Hey, welcome to Men on Everything, our weekly show where we talk about lots of different things. We talk about just about everything you can imagine. I'm Tony Scott. There's Troy Johnson at the studios of WHUR in Washington, D.C., and Mark Clark at his new business, Ironings Are Us.
4 shirts for $1.
Man, that bed is made up.
Yeah, them sheets are tight. You
Nice,
can,
man.
you can bounce a quarter on that thing, man.
Yeah,
You
man.
know, now that I'm away from my family, I must maintain a neat place.
Yeah, yeah, okay.
Just got back from room service. I see.
Yeah.
Maria! Maria!
Senor! Senor!
I'm sorry. Dios mío.
Man, in the last few days, there have been so many things going on. I guess we can start with Michael Brown is the 18-year-old in Ferguson, north of St. Louis City, and shot dead. Originally called shot 10 times. Now they're trying to spin it as multiple times by a police officer whose name they were going to release today, and then they decided not to. They were going to release it. They said for legal reasons they had to, but then they announced this morning that they were not going to release his name. And I got to be real honest with you, I'm kind of glad that they're not releasing his name, just for the safety not only of him and his family, but the safety of other people in the city, because St. Louis is going through something right now that it hasn't gone through, if at all, in a very long time. I was told a long time ago that during the riots in the 60s in Detroit, Chicago, in Watts, Oakland, things like that, then in St. Louis, nobody did anything but sit and watch it on TV. Well, that is far from the case now, which some can say is a good or a bad thing, guys, because you guys spent a lot of time here in St. Louis, because at one time we all worked together here in St. Louis, and you guys frequented a lot of the places that were damaged, looted. The Quick Trip maybe not so much, but you would know where it is, and it's heartbreaking. It's sad. It's misdirected, and all this looting that was done on Sunday night, and some of the stuff that it wasn't last night. The police took more of an aggressive stance last night because they fired tear gas. There was tear gas in the streets on West Florissant, so they were clearing people out of there. They were not going to be as, for lack of a better word that I can think of, as laid back as they were Sunday night, when really all hell broke loose. I'm firmly convinced that the people who were doing the looting were not the people who were peacefully protesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree, Tony. There's something about being you're right there. You're in the middle of everything, but as you mentioned, that was our home for a while, and to see it on TV and to see people as agitated as they are, and that overshadowing the fact that you lose another young black man in this type of violent way. We've seen that particular story before. It just is heartbreaking all the way around. I agree. I want to commend you for going to social media and having a conversation with people about what's going on, and suggesting that people stay calm, go back home, not get involved in any of that stuff, because you're right. Nowadays, it's like with any large event that's happening, when it's on your television and it's down the street, you're going to be inclined to go down there and see what's going on.
Yeah.
And either participate in a peaceful way and make your voice be heard and call for justice, or go down there and act a damn fool.
Yeah.
Get emotional. I think that it's interesting how we do. Obviously, you see why we get emotional, but it's interesting how, where every large city has black on black crime every day, we get so outraged when it's done by, I guess the people who are supposed to protect us. But at the same time, you have to wonder, where is this outrage, all the time? That's the part that I think I always think about is, so therefore, like you said, Troy, if you're going to go down and see what's going on and you can't keep control of your emotions, maybe it's best that you don't. Maybe it's best that you let other people do that, because we can't afford to have more people killed. We can't afford to have, you can protest in a way that has nothing to do with physical at all. Now, especially with social media, you can systematically demand things on social media through, really just doing that. It's just systematically attacking. If it's asking questions of the police force or asking questions of our politicians, there's letters, there are emails. There's ways that we can do it now that we don't have to take to the streets, because I think that the taking to the streets is just too volatile. So, Tony, that being said, tonight are there still threats that tonight it could continue to be the third night?
I think that it's hard to say. I can tell you that yesterday, one of the things that, and I talked to people yesterday, we were fearful of nightfall, of what it was going to bring. And yes, there are going to be people out again tonight. And yes, there are going to be angry people out there tonight. And yes, there are going to be people who are looking to take advantage of the situation like they did Sunday night. Yeah, it's going to happen. Was there looting last night in Ferguson? Not to my knowledge, but there was looting in South County, St. Louis County, and carloads of people got out of a car and they trashed and looted a shoe carnival, a shoe store, a family shoe store, and took things. And the thing is that people are going to do what people are going to do. You're right. I mean, we're never going to have, this was going to happen. I mean, anybody who didn't think this was not going to happen is not being honest. But the stupidity, and I'm not talking about the crime itself, but afterwards, people posting, I got shoes in all sizes, here's my number on Twitter. People posting similar things on Facebook and stuff like that. What the hell is wrong with you, man? What is wrong with you? Do you not know? And then Sunday night, the Fox affiliate here, Fox 2, KTVI in St. Louis, was on it late into the night. And, live shots of looting that was going on, cars that were pulling up, license plates that were being shown. There were a handful of people who took the license plate off their cars, which means that it was premeditated. I don't know what that'll mean in a court of law. But they also there was a Hibbett sporting goods store that people were going into looting. And while they were in there, because some people, they just grabbed stuff and left and ran, right? Clothes, shoe, whatever they could get into their arms, they grabbed and left, okay? For lack of a better way to explain this, those were the smarter ones. I guess there were 5 or 6 of them that were in the store. I guess they were looking for their sizes. Because
they were shopping, man.
They were in there for a while, and I'm talking about, it was a live shot, right? And then all of a sudden, 2 police cars pull up, and they go in, and they had them all down on the ground. Now, 2 of them did manage to escape, and we saw them escape. One guy tried to do the same thing, but when that police officer put his hand on his hip, that dude threw his arms up and got down, and then more officers came and they handcuffed him and took him away. I think they made over 30 arrests Sunday night when they finally decided to do something. But while things were going on, West Florissant going north, which is one of the main streets in Ferguson, they had made their way up to Delwood and were headed. People were worried about the Walmart, because Walmart, I don't know if that particular one does or not, but Walmart is known to sell firearms. So that one had, I guess the police decided, we're going to land on this spot. And this is going to be ground zero for us. This is going to be our headquarters, tonight. So they protected the Walmart, but it was moving up, and it was quite frightening to see, and then you see people broke into a beauty supply store. You could see them on TV, women running down the street with bags of weave. And it's like,
Lord Jesus, Tony.
This is what's important to you.
The essentials.
Yeah, this using the murder of Michael Brown was your come up. And you're gonna be able to sleep and look yourself in the mirror with this. And you know what the answer to that question is? Yeah, they are. Because the people who do things like that, they have no regard for anyone but themselves.
They're not worried about that. The fact that a family, you know, is grieving for the loss of their child, and they have to stop their grieving, stop their funeral arrangements to tell people to act sensibly. To have to call for calm because this is not what Michael Brown stood for.
Right.
You know, I mean, I'm just there are a range of emotions that just come to mind, but if I just feel so sorry for that mom and dad and grandfather, and you know, we're talking about a blue collar Midwestern town, just people trying to get by and do the best they can. And you know, they pinned a lot of hopes and dreams on their son, and he was trying to do the right thing.
You know, I was a friend of mine who I consider a friend, who I've interviewed for social media, was teaching a class at the school where Michael Brown was supposed to start yesterday. And while she was calling names, basically checking roll for the first time, it dawned on her that he was supposed to be here this morning. And when I read that, it just gave me chills. I'm getting chills now, even telling you about this. This madness that's going on now. The police, Ferguson police, turned the investigation over to St. Louis County Police, but at this point, nobody trusts the police. Right? And to some degree, they were proven right because, let's just call it what it is, the bullshit reason they gave us on Sunday morning just didn't make any sense to me. It's like, okay, you're saying that Michael Brown, there was a tussle near the police car. Now, my question is this, and I'm not...
In the police car.
Yeah. And a shot was fired allegedly in the police car. But my question, I'm never ever been in law enforcement. I've talked to lots of police officers, not about this specifically, but I've never known any police officer to try and take what he considered two suspects for whatever reason. Why did he try and take them on by himself? Why didn't he call for backup? To me, that would be normal protocol, that if it's more than one person,
and an imposing person at that, you know,
Michael was a big guy. Yeah, he was a big guy. But two people, why would you not call for backup? Why would you try and handle this yourself, right? So I got to call BS on that. You know, I just don't believe that's what happened. I don't know what happened. I mean, they could be right. I don't know. I don't believe that they're right.
But Tony, so the witness said, so that was the story that the police told at first, right?
That's what they said.
But since then, witnesses or alleged witnesses have said that they didn't even see that part. So that part is up in the air. No one knows. So that you're saying that part, because that was like the basis of the first time when I called you, you told me that's what happened. But then it kind of, since then, it's been like, well, that was the word of the police. But since then, witnesses said that wasn't the case. He had his arms up. They didn't see a struggle. The two people, like you said, the part that's odd, when you first told me, I didn't realize there were supposed to be two people. That just seems odd that it would be, like you said, two people and then a breakaway and they almost grabbed your gun. It just seemed far-fetched. So, and what about the FBI, Tony, now being a part of this?
Yeah, the FBI was called in now, I don't know if they're going to take over the investigation from St. Louis County Police or they're going to run a parallel investigation. In other words, do their own thing while the St. Louis County Police do their own investigation. I don't know which way that's going to go. I'm not real sure if it's been decided, and if it has, I don't know. But they're in it. But at this point, when this has happened yet again, it's hard for the African American community to trust any law enforcement. And I don't know, federal government included, I don't know if there's any investigative agency that could come in that the African American community would put their confidence in at this point, because it's ridiculous. I mean, Michael Brown, from all accounts, was a big softy, and I don't mean that in a disrespectful way. He's a big guy, but he had a good heart. He was a nice guy. He smiled a lot. He just loved life, and he was looking forward, after just graduating from high school, getting ready to start his college career. And he won't do that, you know. He's not gonna get to go to Six Flags here in St. Louis with his friends, and he's not gonna get to finish college and have his mom and dad watch him walk across that stage, and he's not going to be able to start whatever career he had chosen to pursue, and he's not going to be able to have children and take them to school and watch them graduate and become a grandfather. He's not going to get any of that. He's not going to be able to go to a concert. He's not going to be able to do that. He's not going to be able to walk in Forest Park go to a family reunion. All that is off the table forever. And that angers me a lot, because, you know, when we're young, we don't think about how precious life is, because we're living our life. But as you get older and more settled in your ways and stuff like that, and you start to lose people in your life, you realize how precious life is. And it really hurts me. To back up for a minute, you know, Sunday night when all this was going on, because I'm not working right now, this is the only skill set I have, and I felt like I had to do something. I needed to do something, and I didn't know what to do. And I had been toying with some YouTube features, YouTube Live, things like that, but I had never done it. And I decided, you know what? I'm gonna try it. If I can get it to work, I'll go with it. If I can't, then I won't. But it's going to be very bare bones. There's not going to be, you know, lower thirds with my name and my logo up here like my normal productions are, things like that for this show and other shows that I do. It wasn't going to be like that. It was going to be me and this camera and this microphone talking to people, begging them to stay home, and begging parents to pull rank on their children and don't even let them outside. You know, and I just felt like it was something that I needed to do. Now, last night, I was getting messages like, "Where are you?" And someone sent me a message and says, "Your silence is deafening. This city needs you. You need to do what you did last night." So I did, and I have had 3 messages today saying, "Are you on tonight?" And I guess that's a sign that I need to be on tonight. You know,
yeah.
And the first night, Sunday night, I was on for over 3 hours. You know, begging people, because this is my community. This is my city. This is my, you know, I moved here in 1989 and have told people how much I love this town. And in a perfect world, this is where I want to spend the rest of my life. Now, my employment status changed, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to stay here the rest of my life. I may have to go where there's opportunity. I don't really want to, but I may not have a choice. But in a perfect world, this is still where I want to be. You know, this is a city where I became the man God wanted me to be. I've said that numerous times. So it bothers me to see what people, what we're doing to the community. Why people are destroying their own community is, it breaks my heart, but at the same time, it's not the protesters. These are people who are taking advantage, who are selfish people taking advantage of Michael Brown's murder. And that's exactly what it was. You can call it murder, you can call it homicide, you can call it an execution, you can call it whatever you want, but his life was snatched from him.
And Tony, you know, you talked about you know, the kind of the apathy that people have in St. Louis, and the disdain for the police. And, you know, I'm glad that I was fortunate enough to not grow up that way. But I totally understand why somebody would feel that way. You know, if what you see is your friends getting hassled, or you getting hassled while you grow up, you know, on most accounts, when you talk to police officers, when you talk to folks that are in the government that have run cities or something like that. It's always comes down to just a few bad apples that are going out of their way to do things that they should not be doing. And it gives a black eye to the rest of those law enforcement officers that are doing the right thing.
Sure.
But we talked just before the show started. I'm going to play this soundbite that I had in my newscast, and it just kind of hit me this morning when I was doing the news, of a kid who lives in Ferguson, and he was reacting to this whole situation with Michael Brown. It's a short clip, but I'll play it for you right now.
I'm just 15, and it's crazy how the people that's supposed to be out here protecting us is the ones killing us. So it made me live in fear in my everyday life. Like, are they going to kill me? I'm saying, what is going to happen? Like, I feel like I can't even call them no more, What can I do?
Yeah. The thing is that when you think about what he said, okay, for the rest of America, you go into certain parts of town that are known to be seedy, and you're very careful, and sometimes you wish you didn't have to go in that part of town. Maybe it's on the way to work or whatever, and you look for police officers. But when you're a black male, you don't even have the safety net of police officers. Now, I'm not saying that's true, but that's the mindset of African Americans in regards to what the police can do for them, which in a lot of their minds is not a damn thing. Do you understand how, people have to understand how frightening it is to live that life. And I'm not talking about thugs. I'm talking about good working people who put in 40 hours a week and take care of their families and are just trying to do the right thing. These are the people who actually are fearing the police.
That kid was very well spoken. Imagine navigating your, like you're saying, Tony, navigating your teenage years. There's so many pitfalls around you. You're trying to have fun, but you're trying to balance that with whatever your responsibilities might be. But you also, in the back of your mind, this kid already has his mind made up that I cannot count on a police officer. They're killing kids that look like me. That's what they do.
Yeah.
I mean, that's already ingrained in his whole psyche about the police. And, when he makes it to 25 and 35 and 45, what's to say that his mindset isn't going to change?
Right.
And the thing, I think what happens, like you said, when you look at it as people of color, even the looting, and you ask why, we know what it comes down to. I was thinking, I think last week I mentioned the whole states' rights conversation. When you feel unprotected, when you feel helpless, we have the advantage of having some degree of success, and we live in certain neighborhoods and we work at certain places, but we still face that moment when someone of authority makes a judgment on you, and we have to either get in line or we have to show by how we speak or our job badge that we're good, we're okay, we have this background, you know what I mean? But then these kids, like you guys said, these kids they have never had that. So just by being.
Yeah. I mean, yesterday evening there was a meeting at one of the churches here. A lot of the clergy were there and people were there. And the clergy spoke, and people had a chance to ask questions and comment. And towards the end, Tim from Sweetie Pies was there, and he was not happy. Tim is a man who spent 10 years in prison. I don't know if a lot of people know that or not. And Tim challenged the clergy to get out of the pulpit and get in the streets. And it was to watch it on TV when he said that, it was an uncomfortable moment. But it had to be said. It needed to be said. I don't know how the clergy took it, but it was very interesting. Now I will say that, and I've said this for a few years, the problem with these meetings, and I've hosted lots of town hall meetings on violence in the city, and and what are we going to do with our schools when the St. Louis public schools became unaccredited, and I spoke on all this stuff. I hosted events on this stuff, and what the problems are in our community. And the problem with these meetings is the people who need to be there to hear the message are not there. They're never there. There's a gang problem. We have a meeting. There are no gang members there, so we can ask, well, what's the problem? What's the, and I don't know. I'm not being realistic. I probably not. But it almost seems like we're wasting time in meetings when we could, I thought about it when Tim said it. We need to quit having meetings and we need to get in the streets. Is what we need to do. We need, we need more of that. There are people here in town. When I went on Sunday night on YouTube, I got called a coward for telling people enough, to stay home and to be peaceful and stuff. And they were like, "You're a coward. You're a coward because we've marched enough and we protested enough. Now's the time for action." And to me, so now you're telling me you're tired of marching, which I understand, and you're tired of protesting, which I understand. So now you want more blood in the streets. This is what you want. And they said, well, in other countries, they would have no problem with that. Well, yeah, but in other countries, they have no rights. They have nothing. They literally have nothing. So they have nothing to lose. How the mentality of African American men, because someone posted over the weekend that we're killing each other because we have no value. We see no value. How they got young African American men got into that frame of mind is what needs to be addressed. And we need to ask these young African American men, we need to quit having symposiums and town hall meetings and talking to each other. It's like we're giving each other a hand job. You know what I'm saying? We need to get out there and ask these kids, what's wrong? What's wrong? What can I do? I mean this. What can I do? What is it that needs to be done that would cause you to change your mindset? And if they say nothing, you can't do a damn thing, you need to keep asking.
Yeah, like you said, you have to get out there. I did a program at the juvenile justice system and for 9 weeks. And it amazed me how, first you come in, first couple weeks, maybe 3 weeks, you don't even feel like they're even listening to you.
Right. But
because they've been dissed by their dad and all black men in their lives, they want you to prove to them that you're serious. So by week 5, they bought in, because I was there 5 weeks in a row. And then at the end, it was unbelievable.
Yeah.
But you're right, Tony. No more meetings, no more conversations. And even with us, when I'm saying us, people like us, it's really on us to just get out, start doing something, instead of, even in St. Louis, these programs. And you know what? Someone else is already doing it. All you got to do is plug yourself into it. When Troy and I used to walk with the Tahiti Youth Group or whatever, there's already people doing it. You don't even have to recreate the wheel. You just come by Saturday and say, hey, man, I'm for the next 5 weeks, I like to help out. Because I think across the country, that's what's going on. And even having the conversation about the police, because we feel the same way a lot of them feel, to a degree about law enforcement and authority. We have to, but we can express to them that, because unlike them, we can escape to our neighborhoods. Mm-hmm. We can escape to our, wherever we are and not have to deal with, like you said, Tony, we go to bed at night, now the interesting thing is when the rubber hits the road is when people start going into upscale neighborhoods. Then all of a sudden the big boys come into play because they let you tear down working class, lower class neighborhoods, lower income neighborhoods. Go to Ladue. Mm-hmm. Go to Ladue and best believe it will be over.
Yeah.
But they're not going to go to Ladue because they've been brainwashed to just tear up their own.
Yeah. And they know that is a Ladon't.
Well, yeah. That's the thing. And then Al Sharpton is here today, and there was a news conference that was live on TV about an hour or so ago, as of us taping this now, where he spoke out. Now, when it was announced that Al Sharpton was coming to town, people were why do we need Al Sharpton? Why do we need that? But and I try to explain it to people. You know what? You can say what you want about Al Sharpton, but Al Sharpton serves a purpose. All right, Al Sharpton, you can say that you think he's a phony or that he has his own agenda. Al Sharpton's presence at something like this serves a purpose, and it's a good thing.
Family requested him to come.
And
he was on a plane.
Yeah, and he serves a purpose. He puts things. He brings a light. There's already a light on this. He brings another light, and we need another light in this situation. I don't know what's going to happen, but in my mind, I think what a lot of folks here in St. Louis are angry about, and one of the things that has them the most pissed off about, is the fact that in their heart of hearts, they know what the outcome of this is going to be. You know, and the outcome in their mind is that this cop's going to get away with murdering Michael Brown.
Well, that's the part. Last night on the air here in New York, when I talked to you, Tony, then I just asked the question. It is interesting because for the first time, not the first time, but in these situations, this happens. Black men being killed by the cops happens all the time. In New York, they ruled that he was killed, that it was a homicide. So I'm anxious to see. I think in New York, people are like waiting to see. Well, damn, what's going to happen? Is there a changing of the tide? Has the social media world or all the media does it put pressure on these situations for answers? And I think maybe so. But then again, with Trayvon, you know what I mean? So it's interesting. You're right, Tony. It's interesting to see what happens. But there is a glimmer of hope because of the coverage and because it's not buried in the back page of stories. This is a front page story. And so, and also it's interesting, Tony, what's interesting is like Ferguson Small, the not having the most savvy response or leadership not looking as competent or as sympathetic as it possibly could makes you realize how important it is for every city to have a spokesperson for law enforcement or for whatever that seems like the kind of person that symbolizes fairness and, someone who's going to get to the bottom of it. Unfortunately, that wasn't the first thing that was shown after this tragedy. And I think that's why they're having a hard time recovering because nobody believes anything they have to say.
And I think social media has changed the way things like this are handled now. It almost forces them to be more transparent, although they still have their ways of hiding things. Last night, the police told the media, leave or get arrested. And to me, that was a huge mistake. And it might have been because, the first thing that popped into my mind was something's getting ready to go down that they don't want anybody to know about. Right, so they want the media to get the hell out of there. But what they failed, first of all, you can't deny the media. Okay. Second of all, if the media did all leave, it doesn't mean that this is not going to be covered because people are out there with their smartphones and they are recording everything. They're taking pictures of everything. You could go to Vine and see so many posts. In a lot of cases of the same thing, but from different angles. Somebody was on that side of the street doing a Vine of what I was doing a Vine on, and somebody over there is doing the same thing, and it's like you have to look, as my father would always say, you have to look at the big picture of everything. In the big picture, whoever decided that we need to get the media out of here, that's probably something. I think the media knows when they need to pull back in regards to feeling a sense of danger. Yes, there are times that it just happens and unfortunate things happen, but they pretty much have done a really good job of policing themselves, of keeping themselves out of harm's way. Now, having said that, Sunday night, Channel 4, the CBS affiliate here, had their windows broken out of their van, and Channel 5 couldn't leave because people were sitting on their vehicles and they couldn't leave. So, yeah, that went on. But last night, the tear gas came out. There were supposedly people hit with rubber bullets. They were shooting those.
Beanbags.
The beanbags, things like that. So, I don't know. The president was criticized because he spoke about Robin Williams, but he hasn't said anything about Michael Brown. And I said this last night. I don't need to defend the president. He's a big boy. He can defend himself, okay? But it's easier to make a comment about losing an icon, and I want to talk about Robin Williams in a second, but to lose somebody like that, it's a little easier to comment about him, his legacy, his body of work. When you're going to comment about Michael Brown and the murder of Michael Brown, and you're the president of the United States, you have to choose your words very carefully.
And it's developing, yes.
And it's an ongoing, it's a developing story. You know, Robin Williams is gone. He's dead. I'm not trying to be insensitive, but he's gone. Michael Williams is gone, but the circumstances are really different. And the president has to, you know, he's going to write his words, he's going to read them, and then he's going to massage his message. He's going to change some things, put some things in. For a message about the Michael Brown situation, that requires a little bit more effort, a lot more information.
And there's a lot more to come. You know, Eric Holder has already made a comment, a very short comment about, you know, this case needs to be looked at, you know, in essence with a fine-tooth comb. It deserves the attention of some good investigation, is basically what he said. Mm-hmm. But you did have the Attorney General of the United States make a comment.
Right.
So, you know, that's step one. I'm sure Eric Holder will make additional comments, and we're just getting at the beginning of this. Mm-hmm. So the president will likely make a comment, you know, when the time is right. Mm-hmm. Let's put it that way.
I mean, he spoke on Trayvon Martin.
Yeah.
You know, when that happened, it took a while, but he spoke on it, and what he said was touching. It was real, and I appreciated it. You know what he said. So it'll be interesting to see what happens here in St. Louis when the sun goes down tonight. I'm still frightened for sunset tonight.
Mm-hmm. So I was going to say one more thought on the president. You know, at this point in his presidency, when he's been focusing on young men of color, with the initiatives and programs that he's trying to put in place, you know he's going to likely make a comment that's going to tie all of those things together.
Yeah. Now, Robin Williams, who I remember, you know, Mork and Mindy began on Happy Days back in the 70s. When Mork was at the front door of the Cunningham residence and Fonzie opened the door. And from then on, it was on. Robin Williams was a comedic genius.
We knew Tony would remember that.
Yeah. But I mean, Robin Williams was on a whole nother level for many, many years. Robin Williams also battled depression, which ultimately took his life. Robin Williams hung himself, and Robin Williams slit his wrist. Robin Williams wanted to go. Robin Williams was miserable. And unless you are in the darkness that is depression, it's kind of hard to understand why he did what he did. I understand it. And I'm not going to lie. I mean, in my life, not just in recent months, but in my life, I've had those kinds of lows, where that in my mind was on the table, but also in my mind was not realistic. So I haven't, obviously, and I haven't even tried it, and have no desire to try it. But to be honest, yeah, it's been on the table. I mean, it's something that I battle. You know, when someone who has depression has lows, like we all have, our lows are much lower than those who don't. But people don't understand that mental health in communities of color, and I'm talking about African Americans, Latinos, Middle Easterns. You know,
say it, Tony. Say it.
They just don't understand it. It's a taboo subject. You know, oh, he's touched. And they just put them in the back room and close the door and turn the TV on, and every once in a while you'll hear somebody go, hey, 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 and the people laugh. You know,
right. Tony, with what happens, help us understand the feeling when you do have kids. You know, when you have kids, is it one of those things where that's not that was great insight what you just said. It was on the table, but it wasn't realistic. But you understood. You got to the point where you understood that it's not realistic. So what happens with the kids when you're in that dark place and having those thoughts? How do people who are suicidal, who do suffer from depression, do the kids become a non-factor?
Well, I can only speak because everybody has.
It's not logic, you know. It's not really logic. It's just more emotion.
I can only speak from my perspective, where my kids come into play in everything that I do, in everything that I do, and I'm not just talking about. I mean, because I have a 30-year-old daughter who lives in Texas, and she's everything to me, as are my 19-year-old and my 14-year-old. So that means everything to me, my relationship with all three of them is everything to me. So in my mind, at the points when I've been that low, and it hasn't been that often, in my mind, it's like I can't do this to them. I have to endure this pain because I know it'll get better.
Okay, so that's one of the, because that's the other thing what you just said, Tony. They say that is the challenge with people who suffer from depression, is that you just said, it will get better, that they feel like it will not get better, that it will never go away, that it will never. I talked to a friend of mine who suffers, and he didn't go through the therapy route or the medication route. He kind of just went through the consciousness route, and he was just saying, so it's almost like, how you isolate. He basically isolated those feelings, and then kind of battled them, and he still does. You know what I mean? So he's kind of done it. He did it that way, but he was older and he's a little bit more mature. You know what I mean? And so I think, like you said, Robin has been doing it a long time. Sometimes I think people get fatigued. Some people just can't do it anymore or whatever, and they finally just can't handle it anymore, and they just give in.
Well, you think that we say a lot of times age gives you perspective, but then you turn around and Robin Williams kills himself. He was 63 years old.
Right.
So it just depends. Everybody's different. Everybody's lows are different. Our lows are probably, like I said, are lower than people who don't have this. Before we went on today, I had an interview with a fascinating woman who has a book, and after our interview we were talking, because during the interview I had mentioned that I battled depression because she's bipolar, and she told me that you need to quit saying that you battle depression. You need to quit putting those words out there. You have depression, you suffer from depression, but don't put it out there like that. She says those days, and it's funny how her perspective was spot on in my case, because the days where I have lows, in my bedroom I have room darkening shades, right? Because I used to do a morning show and I would take a nap in the afternoon, so I had to have the room dark, right? And on those days I stay in that room with the shades down, right? And I hadn't even told her this, but she says on those days where you just want to be under the covers, she goes, those are the days where you need to get out of the house. Those are the days that Satan is winning. And those are the days that you need to get out, because you may meet someone who's going to change. You may see something that's going to change your perspective. You may see two little kids walking down the street laughing. And what's more precious and more beautiful than that? That may change your whole mindset, but you're not going to see that if you stay under the blanket in your room, which in my case would be the room darkening shades in my room when I stay there. Which, to me, I'm going to have to keep reminding myself of that conversation that I had with this woman, Cassie Booth. And it's something, it is an ongoing battle, but you have to refuse to lose. You have to understand that, like everybody has a down day. Everybody has a day that just wasn't a good day. When people like myself have them, they're really bad days. But you have to keep remembering that tomorrow brings another day. And I think in the case of Robin Williams, obviously I can't speak for him. I never met the man, but I just imagine, I can understand his pain, and I can understand why he did what he did, because he was tired. He was tired. I mean, I think there are different levels of depression, and then you got bipolar, and it goes on and on. There are different degrees of bipolar, and I can imagine that his was probably something that was very tough, and he was just, I mean, when you factor that in, and then what he did for a living, and the pressures of traveling and movies, and then the drama in his personal life, he married 3 times, and alimony and things like that, and then his addictions to alcohol and drugs and stuff like that. That just, that wears people down, and he was probably very tired. When you think about this for a second, Robin Williams wanted to leave so bad that he hung himself and he slit his wrist. That's what they said on TV an hour ago. He did. He was going to go one way or the other. He had to go. And his daughter released a statement saying, "I love you, I'll miss you, and I'll keep remembering to look up." because I think she understood her father. You know, she understood her father, and it's painful. I can only imagine it's painful. You know, it's like going back to Michael Brown. You know, people say, I understand what they're going through. No, you don't. You have no idea what they're going through. Even if you lost a child in a similar fashion, you do not know what they're going through because you don't know the relationship they had. You don't know. I'm not saying it was better than what you had with your child who you lost, but it was different. You know, and so we have no idea what these people are going through. We have no idea what Robin Williams had been going through for 63 years. You know, it wasn't until I went to see a therapist that I realized that I've been suffering from depression my entire life. You know, up to that point that I went on medication. You know, but I didn't realize it because I thought everybody was miserable like me. I thought everybody was always angry at the world. And, you know, the don't F with me mentality. You know, I always thought I thought everybody was like that. And I didn't realize that, you know.
Well, Tony, you know, Todd Bridges called him a coward. What's your take on that? Todd Bridges probably, who also had drug addiction, I probably suffers from it. He called him a coward because he left his kids.
Well, you have to be in Robin Williams' shoes to understand his actions. It's easy for us to call somebody who killed themselves a coward. It's easy to do that. Was Robin Williams brave in doing this? No, I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to say that. The only thing I can say is I understand to some degree his struggle. And I hope that he rests in peace. Because I remember a few years ago, a friend of mine committed suicide. And I remember going to the funeral home and seeing her in the coffin. And she didn't look like anybody else I had seen in the coffin. She didn't look at peace. She didn't look peaceful. You know how when people are, you know, when they die, you see them, they look peaceful. Oh, he looks so peaceful. She didn't look like that. You know, and I pray that Robin finds some peace. To call Robin Williams a coward for committing suicide is really a chicken shit comment to make, to be quite honest. You know, and it's unfortunate that someone says something like that, but, you know, you're entitled to say what you feel. So.
I think, you know, Tony, you hit on something. I have been trying to bang this drum home for years about mental health, you know, and you hit on the key notes about, you know, people thinking, you're going to a therapist, that something's wrong with you, or, you know, just being goaded into feeling like you're less than what you should be because you're trying to get some help. And, you know, or not making time for it, or trying to compensate, and it just doesn't work.
No.
But now there are so many avenues for people to get the help that they need, to have a conversation. Not, you know, obviously suicide prevention lines and all that stuff, but you can also go see a therapist. Cost is not a factor in many cases, because it's that last bastion. There are too many things that happen in this country. There are too many. You know, we've seen you know, people going home, getting a gun, and coming back to work and killing up everybody, or taking out their family, because there's some mental issues that aren't being addressed. And, you know, it would bode well for us to embrace those opportunities that we have to get therapy and to have these conversations, because there's so many qualified people to have the conversation with if there's something that's bothering you. You know, and I mean, it just can't be stressed enough. You know,
well, as you guys know, I have always been open in dealing with depression, and my attitude was always once the difference between being on medication for me, and I can't speak for anybody else, and not being on medication was the difference between day and night. And I think, like, Mark and I did a morning show together for a long time, and it was right at the time that he started working that I started addressing this issue. And he could probably tell you the difference between what I was and then before medication and what I was afterwards. But I say all that to say that in my many years of discussing this on my radio show, I can't even count the number of people who have come up to me. Grown men have come up to me, pulled me to the side. I thought they were going to punch me for something that I said. Maybe they called in and I was made fun of them or something like that. They cried and they hugged me and they thanked me for saving their lives, and they thanked me for things like that. I had a coworker, a former coworker, who reached out to me and was really having a tough time, and suicide was on the table. She told me this. She was considering it, and I recommended my therapist, and she wasn't working. She didn't have health coverage. She didn't have any money. And I told her, don't worry about that. So I called my therapist and told him, I got someone I need to send you. I said, send me her bill. Right? And I told him the situation, and he never charged her. He never charged her. And she's still around. I've heard from her in the last few days, and you know, she's hanging in there and she's fighting the good fight. But until you, and God forbid, unless you suffer from this, unless you fight this disease, and it is a disease. Depression is, for clinical depression, and I can only address that, is the inability for your brain to produce a chemical called serotonin. Serotonin is what regulates your moods. And sometimes your brain quits making it for whatever reason. Sometimes your brain never made it, which was my case. And so you take medication that jumpstarts the making process of serotonin to help regulate your mood. And so it's a disease. You're not crazy. We like to make fun of ourselves. I do, because I find humor in a lot of things, but that's who I am. But people, unless you've been in that battle, your comments as insensitive as calling somebody a coward for committing suicide is stupid. It's irresponsible, and it really shows what kind of man you are when you do something like that. You've battled your own demons. Nobody called you a coward for having a drug problem. No one ever criticized you for that, to my knowledge. And if they did, they were wrong like you are now, Todd Bridges. So unless you walk in somebody's shoes, their shoes, not similar shoes, their shoes, then you can really offer nothing but support. I mean, in my opinion. So
no, you're right. I had a short bout with depression after something happened in my life, and it gave me the perspective on what you're talking about. Never had a relapse or anything like that, but those drugs were amazing. Yeah. I'm mentioning it to try to explain to folks that have not gone through it. It's like when you just feel overwhelmed, in my situation, just overwhelmed with a sadness that I could not control. And I knew something was wrong. I knew that this was unlike anything I had ever experienced before. And when I took the medication, and again, it was a very short period of time because I seemed to recover, when my mind would go to what was killing me at the time, the meds kicked in. It was like, it was like, hey, I'm good. It was you could feel where the medication was actually working. It's amazing. So, Tony, I have a little bit of an understanding of what I can only imagine what that's like to deal with for your entire life. Yeah. I just dealt with it for a season, but I certainly understand, that if you don't, and I knew, if I don't address this situation, what's going to happen down the line?
I mean, it's almost like being in a vat of negativity, anger, hostility, all these things, and people keep throwing you a rope to pull you out, but your arms won't move. And you feel helpless, and you feel like this is my lot in life. This is how it's supposed to be, and it's not.
And the sad part is, you just described, sadly, these neighborhoods that most of these black males come from.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's true. Yeah. That's true. That is very true.
Then on top of it, like I said, Tony, then on top of that, on top of it, depression. Yeah. You know, it's like, oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's sad. So we're at about an hour, so we'll wrap up. This is it was kind of a different show today because of what's going on in St. Louis and what happened with Robin Williams, and just something that I think we needed to spend our time on. So we appreciate you watching. You can give us a thumbs up and subscribe and share it as much as you can. Maybe this will help someone put some things in perspective. I don't know. If you think it, we'll send it to them. It don't cost anything. It's free, and I appreciate you watching. All right, we are Men on Everything. I'm Tony Scott in St. Louis. That's Troy Johnson at WHUR in Washington, D.C., and that is Mark Clark from the Ironing Club in New York City, right?
4 shirts for $1.
Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.